Hi everybody, and a warm welcome back to Maple Leaf Customs. I'm Andrew, and on the bench today is a Matchbox King Size number K-2 Scammell Heavy Wreck Truck. And it's going to be my next project in an ongoing series of Mad Max Fury Road vehicles. This one's going to be what they call the Mack. You can see it's in pretty rough shape from the get-go. A couple tires are missing. There's broken windshield glass, one of the two hooks is gone, but there's no worries, it's going to get gas landed, like my war rig was from late August. You can check the links in the description to see that one, and I hope you'll enjoy this as well. Settle in as I try to edit down about 4 hours of video footage into roughly 20 minutes for your watching enjoyment. I do my best to mix up the content at Maple Leaf Customs, and generally their restorations or custom jobs is what we call a shiny car, but I sure do enjoy the Gaslands genre because I feel more like a model maker when I do these, and there's a great scope for creativity and inventiveness, and I just let my imagination run wild. So as I did for the war rig, I'm going to base my build here on the Fury Road film, but I'm not married to that, and so please allow me a little bit of latitude to freelance here and there and incorporate some of my own ideas, but it should be very recognizable to you if you're a fan of the film, like many of us in the hobby are. Why don't you take a moment or two right now and hit that subscription bell in the bottom right corner of your screen and get all subbed up here. It's totally free, and I hope you choose to come back regularly too. Today's community shout out goes to BP Custom Creations. Benjamin is a super skilled hobbyist, and you are going to thank me for pointing you in his direction in case you're not already familiar with his relatively new YouTube channel. He doesn't need a boost from me because his videos get 55,000 viewers, but he's been an inspiration to me, and I consider that just a university class in weathering and hobby building every time I go by. And so I left a link in the description for BP Custom Creations, and I'd like you to pop over and see Benjamin. I'm going to use AK Interactive Heavy Chipping Liquid today to do my weathering effects on this. So on top of the rust coat, I added a second and third different colors of orange. Old rust is brown, new rust is orange, and now I'm taping off the fenders and the back so that only the cab is exposed for a red paint layer. I unmask that, put a little more tape on, and the remainder of the wreck truck is going to be done in white. Looks pretty clean and shiny right now, but the AK Interactive Heavy Chipping Liquid is interesting. It's reactivated by moistening this top layer of paint, and then with a toothbrush, or here you see me using a toothpick, you agitate the top layer very gently, and that exposes what's underneath. So now I've got my two-layered rust under there, and even a little bit of the original gold that I didn't strip off because I was hoping to see some of that peek through. And it already looks well weathered, and that's sufficient if it's behind your grandpa's barn, but it's not going to do for the wastelands. I want to go full Mad Max mode here, so the weathering and distressing continues with a Dremel burr tool, and I'm going back to bare metal in some certain areas that I think would be most heavily rusted. Under the wheel flares, under the windows, wherever water would accumulate naturally. I should add here that everything has been clear coated with a matte finish, and only what is down to bare metal now is going to be affected by this stage, which is a chemical dip in iron 3 chloride that I bought at the local hardware store. You can see that it aggressively attacks the bare metal. Everything else is protected, and after I have rinsed it and spritzed it with some water, I can handle it like this and you'll see a very realistic looking 3D effect where the chemical has eaten away at the bare metal, just like in reality. Here's the first of many coats of black wash as the weathering process continues, layer by layer. It's a process that builds one upon another. A little bit of typhus corrosion goes a long way. It's also got a 3D effect to it where it's applied sparingly. Here's some rust wash going on, so the white is no longer real white, and it's starting to take shape. Here I'm taking a page out of BP Custom Creations playbook, and I've seen Benjamin do this a couple of times. I like this certain random effect that I've seen him do with styrene. I'm just using the lid from a Miracle Whip container, and I've cut out some pieces of steel, and this finest styrene rod that I've got is cut into tiny little rivets that are applied with some glue, primed, and painted. This had to be done separately because of the chemical dip. If this plastic had already been on the truck when dipped, it would have just melted away. So it's an extra step to do some painting, but when applied, I think it gives a really interesting look. Again, not part of the film vehicle, but something I wanted to give a try. So thanks, Ben, for that good tip. There's going to be a little bit more of this look as I move along, but I give my attention to the wheels now. If you've got some king size or super king vehicles that are 50 years old like this, you know that the wheels ultimately become loose, and it's no surprise that some of them fall right off. But I got an eBay haul a little while ago. I posted a video on that, and the bonus part of that purchase was this huge bag filled with Matchbox spare wheels and side mirrors and exhaust stacks and all kinds of goodies, which was worth the purchase price alone. So I easily found the 2 missing tires that I need, and I reapply them with some super glue, so there's no fear that they'll ever come off again. And in the back, notice if it's a set of dualies, I not only glue the wheels to the rim, but I glue the wheels to the wheels. So they're on there for good now. One of the beacons was broken in the original casting that I got. I'm putting another piece of plastic underneath this from the inside, so now I've got a little floor under those 3 openings. And I've discovered that these little LED lights are just about the perfect solution for the always broken or missing beacons. And I've gone with a set of red ones for the Fury Road truck, and I apply them, and the horns are back in place now with a little bit of glue. Looking good. The weathering continues on the wheels, and I'm making some of my own weathering powders now. This is simply sidewalk chalk from the dollar store that the kids use to make their hopscotch markings out in the driveway in the middle of the road, and I've shaved them down, and now I have a rainbow of colors of fine powders. And I want to experiment with this and see how effective it is as far as a dusting technique goes. So with one of my old junky paintbrushes, you can see it looks like a powder storm, but that's no problem. I can blow that away off my desk, but it really does give an effective dusting look. And I'm using the 2 earth tones here, and then I revert to my store-bought Tamiya weathering powders, especially for the rust effect. And it's starting to look old and grungy the way that I want it to. I'm able to put the chassis back on the body now and reaffix it with the 3 screws that came out originally. And now work will continue with this as one solid unit together. Is it a roller? I try to make sure everything on Maple Leaf Customs is, although I don't think it's ever going to see the race truck. Now I'm going to scratch build the bumper bar on the front of this using just about my last piece of styrene rod in this particular size. I put it in some near boiling water to soften it, and now you can see I'm able to bend that into 90 degrees just using the screwdrivers that were on my desktop. Some light styrene glue puts that together. It's been primed and goes right on the front. Perfect fit. And I found it would be easier to attach the side pieces that I want to use separately, and so I apply them now. They're just old sprues from a plastic model kit that I've reimagined for this purpose. And part of the original film vehicle were these two, I take it to be beadlock rims that are housing the wire line that these harpoons shoot out, and I've simply cannibalized a couple of click pens that I have and put them in there, and they serve the same purpose. And now I want to fabricate the harpoons that are front mounted and approximate the same look, which I think I did. Here's a little side seat on the Mad Max vehicle for someone who rides outside there, and I'm painting that up, and I'm going to put it on with some super glue. Look at my fingers. That was a glued day. And there is absolutely no limit to the number of things I can glue myself to. A little bit of activator dries that up as quickly as possible. And another unique feature of these is the poles. In the movie, these guys are called pole cats, and they swing from their vehicle right down to yours on these very high and flexible poles. So that was an absolutely integral part of this build. Again, with the finest dimension rods that I have, and I paint them up black. And a little extra armor. This is an old tomato can that I used on the war rig, and one can goes a long way in this hobby, so I've just sort of put that on as intentionally patchy looking over the driver's door and part way up the window. And here's a little more of the same windshield effect going over the dualies in the back. More rivets are cut out with my craft knife and applied. And again, this has to be painted separately because this never would have survived the chemical dip. But that's all right. I probably spent a month poking away at this on and off between other builds, so I'm never in a big rush, and I do a little bit here and a little bit there, and just take my time and then let the ideas percolate, and I get back at it again. So both sides are now a little reinforced with the same look. That's some gunmetal gray, and I'll run some black wash and rust wash over there as well. This is not a fully weaponized vehicle, but I found this in my Gaslands weaponry inventory. It looks like it shoots out a net of some kind, and whoever is riding in the side seat gets this little shoulder-mounted bazooka. And I'm happy to let you know that duct tape sales are alive and well in the post-apocalyptic world, so I thought I'd wrap a little bit on the bumper bar for a little bit of a homemade look to it. Why not? There's an extra tank of something goes in the back here. I'm going to weather that up too. And I've changed the look of the, whatever this is called, the tow bar or the hook on the back was a single, it was a dual hook originally. One of mine was broken off and missing in action, and I'm going to make up this type that more closely matches the film with a couple of toothpicks and some masking tape and Get out my box of springs. All I need is one ring off of the very end of that to affix to the top of the tow crane. And I want a little bit of color on my cars, so I paint these up, but they're going to get a black wash and look well used and grunged up, just like everything else on the assembly. Put a couple of chains on there to hold it in place, and it's looking very much like the movie rig from this angle. And what's a Wastelands build without a couple of skulls? I wait for any opportunity to paint a few of these up and put them on, not to overdo it. This one gets 3 or 4 skulls. They're trophies. And I place them discreetly around in some openings where I thought they would look good. Alright, I'm letting everything dry up and cure on the wreck truck and turning my attention to one of my first mini terrain dioramas using basic styrofoam. I've cut this out to a particular size that I want and covered it with Mod Podge and sprinkled some hobby sand on top of that, and I let it dry overnight so that when I airbrush it, this is acrylic paint, it's not going to melt or corrode the styrofoam. And everything gets a base coat of black, much like any of the models, the first step in weathering, and it looks like this. Mix up a couple of cheap dollar store acrylic paints, black and white, gives you some gray, and I'm just going to touch the edges of the larger rocks and boulders, sort of where the sun would pick up a glint on these. They're not being solidly painted gray, just highlighted, and I'll do it again in a white highlight. I have a 3D printer and I never throw out the supports when I'm done, and so these are some extra bits, really just waste from 3D print jobs, and I thought that looked just like a girder that might have held up a traffic sign over the interstate or something like that. And back into my bag of random spare wheels for a little bit of color. Red and white. I think this is some Warhammer barbed wire that I coiled up to put on there, and leaving myself enough room for the actual vehicle. A little bit of scrub brush goes in there randomly, and the final touch is some more weathering powders just to dull it all down. And back to my DIY pastels. I can apply this liberally because here it really does look like sand on the gravel, and I can just blow away whatever's extra. And I've cut it to size so that it would fit inside of a dollar store picture frame, 99 euro cents. I think that's about a 5x7. It's not very big, but it's perfect for this one vehicle. What do you think? Show it to you from a couple of angles, but let's pick up the wreck truck and have a closer look now. So many details that I want to tell you about. There's the front harpoons and the bumper bar that I made. You see the scratch-built armor over the windows and the rear tires. There's a shoulder-mounted bazooka, giving new meaning to riding shotgun on the side. Lots of weathering. There's the net harpoon on the top. Some loose chains, like any tow truck would have. And I don't know if this is an attack vehicle or a rescue vehicle in the wastelands, but it's kind of got a little bit of both. Extra armor in case it takes fire from anyone, and I would feel pretty safe and secure behind the wheel roaming the desert in this. No channel logo on the bottom. But this is not going to go to the Goodwill store like all of my other builds. There are too many breakable parts for kids to swallow. So the little diorama and the Scammell number K-2 are going to stay right home here with me as part of my growing collection of Mad Max Fury Road vehicles. was a popular casting. This is the one that I started with. I've since procured the same vehicle in white for some more spare parts. And this is what I turned it into. Lots of work and even more fun went into this, and I hope you enjoyed watching and maybe picked up a couple of tips or tricks. And when you leave a respectful comment below, if you've got some insights for me, new to the genre as I am, I'd sure appreciate hearing from you. Tell me where you're watching from. I'm interested to know. We share this common interest in the Mad Max film and the cars, and so I hope that you've enjoyed this build. I sure had a lot of fun putting it together, and I think it turned out just great. I'm very pleased with all the little details, the final patina that I was able to achieve, and I think it looks pretty good on this particular size diorama. Thanks for visiting Maple Leaf Customs today. Be sure to leave a thumbs up for this if you enjoyed it. Come on back soon and often. It's coffee time.